First of all, welcome to our first ever roundtable session on 80 level. And I'm not sure to how to pronounce your names, guys, correctly. So if you could introduce yourself quickly and tell us a little bit about yourself and your um, work, and then we can continue to other topics of our discussion. So Maxime, can we start with you?
Yes, okay. Hello everyone, I am Maxime Rigole. I am currently a junior environment artist doing an internship in the UK as the last year of my education. So I'm still a student.
Got it. Harriet?
So yeah, hello people. I'm Arti. I'm a lighting artist working in the industry as a freelancer now. I'm living in Istanbul for 3 years now and working in the industry like 3 years or something now. So I'm also studying masters in digital game design in Bahçeşehir University. Also a real-time lighting lecturer there too. So that's in general. That's it.
Amazing. So thank you for joining us during these strange times. And I think it's strange times that we want to discuss during this first episode. So I guess the biggest question right now with COVID-19 in the air, how did it influence your life in general? And so what basically changed for you and your work? I know you're in different countries around. It would be interesting to learn what changed and how do you cope in with that?
Oh well, I shall start. It drastically changed it actually, because you know how it is. Like we have a total curfew right now in the weekends, and I'm sitting at home and I can't leave. It's prohibited, and it's really weird. I never had something in my life, so that's totally weird. Everything that I'm working on is now online. Although, like the work I'm doing with the studio that I'm working for is already like working online. We are like working remotely. That didn't affect it that much. But the school side with my lectures, we went to the online side, and until like we get used to it, it had several problems. You know what I mean? And as a personal and the work side, it's really drastically affected it.
Hmm.
It really does.
It must be very hard to do all the, all the studies, all the lessons and teaching online. I feel like it's still you have to have a certain system for teaching when you're doing this. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, and I must thank to my students and hi to them if they're watching this, and they're helping me out with this stuff. But until like we get used to it, as I mentioned, we had connection issues. They couldn't follow up it, and the the plan that I created for the lectures collapsed because drastic changes. I couldn't do this face-to-face thing, so I implemented a different technique, but it is working up until now, and I think everybody's happy. But the transition was painful.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most challenging aspect now?
The most challenging thing is to, with the online stuff, I was a student, so I know how they feel, but sometimes they lose their concentration easier than being in a class. So keeping them concentrated all along, it's, I think, the most challenging part. And, we are working on Unreal Engine in the class, and not all computers are equal. So some might have really bad time working on the projects that I'm giving. So I needed to change the things that I'm giving to them, the assignments and stuff. And that was the most challenging thing.
Yeah, that's kind of tough to keep concentrated and you're learning something remotely.
Yeah, and in the professional side, I don't have that problem because I got used to it. So for now, 6 months working remotely, so that wasn't a
Oh
big
wow!
deal. But for the lecture side, it is a problem. It was a problem.
So you started working remotely even before this whole thing happened, right? So you were just doing
Yes.
freelance or contract.
Yeah, it's a contract. We are working on a game right now. It
Mm-hmm.
is a contract. It didn't change it that much actually.
I got it.
You know, the,
Maxime,
yeah.
what about you?
For me, it actually happened quite suddenly. I would say I'm originally from Belgium and I still live there, but my internship is going on in the UK. So I hired a student dorm there, and I came back to visit Belgium like a few months ago when this whole thing wasn't that blown up yet. And everything was normal. And then I went back, and almost a week after, everything just went on lockdown in Europe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the company itself actually wanted to close down before the government themselves said so, which is, in my opinion, something very responsible from them on their side. Um, but it did just happen like in a single day where you would just go into the company, you would start working, and suddenly it's like a public announcement. Okay, guys, whoever wants to go home or can go home should go home. And then you had to quickly figure out, like, okay, how am I going to work from home? Because my student laptop surely cannot handle a decent industry level project. They were actually happily enough and surprisingly enough able to send my desktop to my house in Belgium, but
Wow.
I did have to like get a train and all that back to Belgium in a single day, pretty much. Financially as well as to have to like pay for my dorm and all that over in the UK, but it was quite stressful to take 3 trains and go to 5 stations, of which 2 of them are the biggest ones in the UK. Especially knowing that this virus and all that is spreading so easily there.
Mm, I see. Guys, so can you talk a little bit about how your work is currently organized online? So I think Kirill has more experience here because he worked remotely like for a longer period of time. So what would you say is the overall process here? So how are things structured? How do you get your
Mhm.
tasks? And what is different in terms of working online if you compare it to like working in the studio?
Yeah, so starting with how I get my tasks, actually, I am in direct contact with my creative director. So we are chatting through, let's say, on WhatsApp or this kind of stuff. Normally, it is better to use something like Perforce or GitHub, but through the project, since we are like creating first the presentation kind of stuff, so we are not decided not to use it yet. And I'm getting the task directly from him, and how to tell distribute the things. For example, let's say I need a model to be fixed. I'm directly writing to the modeler and telling him, hey, I have this problem. I'm like, in Photoshop, showing him what the problem is, showing him what he or she needs to fix, and telling him, hey, we need to fix that because of this, because of that. So basically, the pipeline that we're using right now is quite similar to a studio, but like it's not the same. It's not face to face. We are contacting each other from online stuff, online platforms, and distributing the stuff we're using. Kind of we transfer for now, and distributing the files and things that we need to share. Actually, we're not using that advanced method since the project has not yet grown that much.
Hmm.
But comparing to working on a studio, I personally prefer to work on a studio because I like to, make things face to face, and I believe sometimes it works better. So again, just like I mentioned in this the lecture stuff, some things are easier when you do them face to face. You can understand whether the person in front of you really get what you're talking about, or if you're on the same frequency. In studio environment, that is better, and in online organization is kind of difficult. But
Hmm.
fortunately, I am not organizing stuff, just telling people what we need to fix or what they need to do in order to, I can light up the stuff better, or how the things are working in a better thing. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it is kind of a bit more difficult than working on a studio.
It feels to me that when you're tackling like a larger project and when you're working like in a company, especially when there's a couple of projects going on, and usually like in bigger studios, this is the reality. Yes, something's always happening. It's always nice to have some kind of like basically a system like Jira or anything of that kind, like where you can track everything, put in the deadlines, and then have conversations around those tickets. Because if you just
Yeah.
go and and start having chat conversations or just shooting emails or messages, they just seem to get lost and people forget about them, and then it goes on forever.
Yeah, fortunately, we're not that large team of people, so we can keep track. But if we were on a larger group, yeah, you're right. Like you're losing track of this conversations going on and everything. But on a small team, small and dedicated team, to be more precise, everything works for now, and we are not having that much of a problem. But when you have a larger team, when you have like more than one focus, and yeah, that would be a problem. But we are coping well for now.
Maxime, it would be super interesting to hear about your experience because you're coming from a like internship perspective, and this is like I guess one of your first times working in a big company. So how are things organized there, and how did they change when you switched to like online uh, work environment?
It is. It's very interesting for me because I was actually looking forward so much working in a company, and now 1 month and I already have to get back home. Um, but I would say the company has quite a lot of tools to actually keep up communication intern like inside the company. Um, like firstly, we have online pages where everyone has their own page and just constantly updates what they are working on, providing videos or photos, any visual material, um, where your supervisors can comment on. And we also have weekly calls, like twice or 3 times a week, where we discuss who's doing what and what could be changed and what could be improved through the same mediums as we're talking right now. And that's quite face to face. It's not exactly physically next to each other, but it actually gets surprisingly close. And we also have in-house conversation methods. Um, we can talk to each other the whole time. We can see who's online, who's out on lunch, and all that. But yeah, it's different. I mean, we still have a very handy video chat where people can draw on your screen, so they can still show you quite easily what they want you to do. They can't do it themselves though, which is a big downside, especially for an intern because you can't do everything right from the get-go. Um, but yeah, I'd say about 70 to 80% is efficient is a good measure for how communication goes.
What about like time management? Do you feel like you're spending more time doing your work or less? Because for me personally, so I used to work from home a lot. So I think for the majority of my life, I worked like freelance contract. So I usually worked remotely, and it was very challenging because not that I didn't like it. I love working from home, but the idea is that you have your whole family here and you have all the other distractions, and sometimes the work could drag like far into the night, and you don't know where your time goes. So I'm wondering, how is it with you guys? Do you feel that you are wasting a lot of time, or do you feel that you're just turning on the clock and you work your shift and then basically you're done? I know it's usually not the case with like 3D guys because they tend to overwork and iterate all the time and change stuff.
Um, I'd say the biggest thing is keeping track of source content, which has to go through a VPN now to be safe, and that VPN does not allow for a big download speed. So that is something you have to do overnight, otherwise you're gonna lose an entire morning doing like that, putting all the new stuff in. Um, from a work efficiency point of view, I'd say it depends from day to day. I get more easily distracted at home. I wouldn't say it happens as much as in the studio though, because you can easily just chat with your colleagues and then get lost in the conversation. Um,
Yep.
yeah, I think efficiency wise, it's mostly a bit less efficient, especially because of the download restrictions and all that. But for me personally, I can get pretty close to what I did in studio.
Yeah, this download stuff is time wasting. I agree with that. And we're transferring this data through internet, and all these people are at home and they're using internet all the time, and the bandwidth is going lower and lower at home. So that is time wasting. But thinking about time management, actually, this current situation affected me in a positive way, because I am not working slower if we are not considering this time lost on the transfers and stuff. But I was afraid that I would be distracted at home, but that's not the case actually. I sit down, work for a while, and then when I feel tired, I can just go ahead, do something else, cook something, play a game, and then come back whenever I want to. As far as I'm not missing any deadlines, I can work whenever I want to. So this is a great, huge positive for me. So this is also, I think, improving my work in this kind of sense. And I'm spending more time on myself, on the projects, and I'm working for this professional thing. I'm working on 2 personal projects, and after a really long time, I found time to play any games. Yeah, that is surprising, but that's how it is. And only problem that I'm missing is sleep. I think is my sleep hours are like bended away. Like I'm going to bed at 6 in the morning, wake up at 12, and you know how it is. It's like really upside down.
Yeah, it's something very similar here. I mean, this is the only time actually during the last couple of months that I actually found some time to play a game. So funny thing is that I bought Death Stranding, I think in November. I mean, when it came out, I think it was November 2019, and I started playing it, and I played it for like little bits here and there, and I only finished it in March. So it basically took me half a
Yeah,
year to
same
finish
here.
one thing.
Yeah, like I'm making games and I cannot play them, with all the schedule. And it was even worse when I was working on a company, I mean, in a studio. And I'm telling to my friends and my parents, hey, that COVID thing is not that bad for me after all. I can have more time with myself, as I mentioned. And okay, I sleep less, but I can do more things in the day. I'm not getting tired as I used to be. So I think that's a positive thing.
That's that's
It's
that's
quite the
great.
same actually.
Really?
Well, yeah, we have to work our shifts basically. So from around 9 in the morning till 6 in the evening, you would just do your shift. You have an hour of free time at noon to eat something and just sit on your couch, watch TV for half an hour. But after that, usually when I had to, like in England, I would just go around and explore the city and such, but I wouldn't be at home, so I wouldn't have everything to my disposal. Now back at home, I actually find myself not necessarily working on personal projects as much as I used to, and really just taking more time for my old hobbies, like going for an occasional jog, which is still allowed under the current quarantine rules. Or reading a book is actually something as well, or painting miniatures, or just sporting in general. Um, Sleep deprivation a little bit, but that's just basically my student night cycle still kicking in, just staying up late.
Yeah, for the student side, that is always helping to revamp this stuff.
Cool, guys. So as far as I understand, you both can get out of the house, right? So you can walk around and check things out.
Actually, in weekdays, I can go out, but on the weekends, it is prohibited. But the problem is, like with all this stuff, all this chaos online, I mean, you think, what if? I mean, you become paranoid of everything. I was not that afraid when it first outburst in Turkey, and I was like, "Oh man, come on, it will gonna end soon." And when I realized how big the problem is, I was like, "Oh my goodness, what will happen now?" I mean, I need to be careful, And I became kind of paranoid. That's a bad thing.
I'm definitely checking the news like at least 7 times more than I used to.
Yeah, same here.
By the
So
way,
what
about
is,
yeah,
what
Maxime.
is like the first thing you want to do when this whole thing is over? I mean,
Oh, I think I will continue to go to gym. And the funny thing is, I'm not that much of a sporty guy, but I'm doing gym sport keep keep my health on. So I quit a gym for 3 months or something before this outbreak happened, and I said, okay, let's restart. And I have time now. I'm like freelance now. I have lots of time, so let's spend it on something better. And in parallel to all those things I'm doing, and I'm not joking. A few hours later, they announced that they're shutting down the gyms, and I was like, okay, that
Um,
was a funny.
I think my first thing is just gonna be a party with friends because last school year was really like time consuming. And then as soon as I get some free time, they just decide to lock everyone inside. So I hope it gets over soon so I can just have like a big group of friends and go out for once in a year.
Yeah, that's amazing. By the way, guys, I know a lot of companies right now, like especially in the 3D field. Like I think Modo, I think Popcorn Effects, some of the others. They're actually like giving away licenses, or they're giving some other types of like software versions available for customers. Have you taken the opportunity to snatch some of the like stuff that they're giving away, or are you just working it the same way you've been working before?
Oh, that's a cool question, actually. I can say both. Like, this extra time helps me to, focus on the stuff that I wanted to develop for a long time. So I haven't snatched any of the softwares with this free licenses, but, again, I'm gonna to connect two questions together. That extra time helped me to, practice with the new software that I wanted to learn, and but I'm following these discounts on the Steam and Epic Store or something, if that makes sense.
I think I'm chasing more to the free games instead of the free software at the moment, which is something that I do tend to
And you know
snap
what?
out.
A weird thing here is, sorry if I interrupted you, Maxime, but a
Oh,
weird
no problem.
thing that we had an increase in the taxes on the game consoles in Turkey. That is like insane. They, I think, had a 50% increase in taxes, so
Oh
it
wow.
just almost doubled in price. Like we were like, oh my goodness, like what will happen when PS5 or new Xbox comes out? That is weird.
Um, yeah, I don't get game taxes because of just taking free games. It's not like I'm just a poor student, okay? Um, yeah, I think new programs wise, I haven't really changed anything because I still have student licenses, which are semi-free. I
Hmm.
mean, I did pay for them, but I can still use them. So, um, and yeah, otherwise, I do have some programs that the studio can provide me that I could pick up on. I mean,
So
I have.
I think this is actually ties very well into my next question is like how do you think this whole situation will it influence the way we're actually making games and making 3D content in general? Does it will it influence the way that we're again building materials, building textures, maybe compressing them more, maybe having them being them making them lighter, or whatever else? Like I think photogrammetry is actually very much hit by this virus because people can't go outside and do all those like crazy photos like in the woods as they used to, right? And I think it influences both in like negative and positive ways. As you mentioned before, you guys working remotely and you're still able to do all your work, which is I think kind of amazing. It wouldn't be possible like even like 10 years ago, because you would be locked in the studio and you would have to do all the stuff there. And now it's so, I guess, transparent and so universal that you can basically do everything you want at home, just send it to the studio, and there's no real necessity in terms of like software and maybe hardware to stay in the office. So my question is, do you think this will stay the same, or people will still flock into the office? And in terms of the pipeline itself, where do you see like the biggest changes happening after this virus goes away? I hope it does, though.
Hmm. That's a great set of question actually. On the side, how it affects we make games, I can answer that on more of an idea side because I'm actively seeing on my work because I am, as I mentioned, I'm working on two, personal scenes for my portfolio, and one of them, the bigger one, actually had a dark theme. But when I combine this together with the things that I'm seeing right now, I can work on it even more because the things that I'm seeing. And the other project, the smaller one, I found myself actually doing an interior. But in this interior, when you check out the details when I release that, you will see the effects. So, living in four walls that you're locked inside, kind of locked inside. So, what I believe for art and design, actually, it is a journey, and it feeds from the things that you see, you experience, and so. Considering in that side, I think this situation being unique one, it's kind of helping us to develop that creative neurons, and I had several more ideas that I wrote down. Hopefully I'll do them in the future. And about the other question, I'm talking about Turkey specifically in this question, because in Turkey, most of the studio owners, I'm talking about in general, are thinking, okay, even if you don't have anything to do, you need to be sitting down on this computer, and you will be in the studio all the time. Now, hopefully, they will see that these things can be done one way or another via online, as you said, without any restrictions at all. And for the bigger companies, for the global industry, I think the studios will take care, more of, advantage of the situation so that they can work with the studio environment and with the online environment together. So I think it will be, kind of a hybrid in between two. That's what I believe.
Yeah, same for me. I think personally, the whole working remotely now is not too much different from a studio. I'd say the only real thing you have to go through is, of course, like things like download being really low. So as an artist, that affects you. Um, and otherwise, just not being physically with your colleagues and quickly able to like show something or ask for something. So efficiency-wise, you still have to get up to the same aspect of working remotely versus studio work. Um, but sharing everything with each other and being able to just complete your own work and just get it in there, finish your lists. Um, I'd say from a studio perspective, it's more of a control situation in that point, where it doesn't necessarily affect your employees' work, but it does affect how efficiently they can monitor their employees because everyone is working at home. So things like secure networks aren't there. People can't be physically seen in the studio, even if they say they are in the studio. Um, it's more of that and controlled lunch hours as well. By example, like not everyone is going to be off at the same time. I think it's more of a efficiency standpoint on that part.
It feels to me that, as you mentioned, security is one of the big problems the studios are actually facing. I'm not sure, how companies like Sony or something like that, or Microsoft, how are they, keeping projects secret when you can actually work on it from your home and your whole family can be there. They can
Oh yeah,
actually
that's a
have
good
a look
point.
at your
Yeah.
screen, even though
Yeah,
you signed the NDA and everything. It's
that's
still
where
like the environment is not controlled, right?
yeah, that is where the big locked door into your room comes in. Um, no one's allowed to come into my room. I had to actually specify all those things. And also just accessing things like source control and all has to be accessed via VPN. The companies have their local setups for that, so you couldn't be able to access it from outside. But now you need some sort of gateway, and I mean that's not completely secure ever. So I think from that security stand of view, they probably have a slight risk still with remote work.
So, and your opinion, like I know we're not like publishers here, but still, um, how do you think it will influence the current schedule of releases this year and maybe next year? Because you've seen some companies already delaying their games indefinitely,
Yeah,
as they're saying.
Mhm.
Some companies are releasing them, so I'm not sure like what's the general trend here, like in
I,
your opinion. What do you feel?
I think it's going to be similar to what the movie industry is doing right now, because everything is just going to get delayed because no one gets to go outside and buy games or like watch the movies. I'd say games are less affected by it because they are online content, so people will probably still online buy them and all that, and they will have more time to play them. Um, so yeah, game-wise, I think releases will less likely be postponed from a client side of view, but more of a employees just not being as efficient and capable of making the game back onto release part of view. If
Yeah,
you
I
get what I
agree.
mean.
I agree with that, but maybe the smaller games won't going to be affected that much. But for AAA companies or like hundreds of people are working, I think that might affect because just like
Yep.
Maxim mentioned, like the efficiency and keeping track of everything. Yeah, I believe that is kind of difficult on just purely online, atmosphere. So I
Exactly.
think there's gonna, well, depending on the situation, actually, is kind of difficult to answer because, well, if they're close to ending, they don't have too much of a problem. Some of the studios can release in time, but if they have problems with, let's say, performance optimization and delicate stuff that need to be tended carefully, I think this will be the main reason for the delays in something. But I think it depends on the studios and the current environment that they're in.
Yeah, I think it depends more on the studio and less on the customers.
Hmm.
Yeah. I got you guys. Well, let's hope that this whole thing will go away, hopefully soon, and then we'll
Hopefully.
have
Yeah.
other topics for discussion for our roundtable at 80 level. But I want to thank you sincerely for joining us for this call and for finding the time to have a little chat. I hope everything's gonna work smoothly out, and you'll be back in your studios and continue your work without being affected by this disease that's going on around.
Thank you guys here. That's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
It's
you
a great honor
guys.
to be allowed on.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here, guys. So let's just, as Kirill, you said, like let's hope it ends soon so that we'll have better things to talk about in these chats and conversations, and
I
everything
hope
will go
nothing.
smooth.
Cool.
I hope
See
nothing
you.
news comes up.
See you in the next episode, guys. Thank you.
Yep. See you. Thank you.
See you.